Okay, I think we are live and live for real.
Yes.
We are cool. All right. So, welcome everybody. So today is the stream number 2 of our series of stream that will be about showing how Tatoeba works behind the scenes and how you can participate to the development of Tatoeba. So, quick explanation again, the concept of this stream is that during each stream we try to have some guest, one or several guests, who will actually try to do something during the stream. And we'll just be witnessing them doing something. So last week, for our first official stream, we had one of the members of Tatoeba who tried to install Tatoeba on his computer. If you are interested to contribute to Tatoeba, installing Tatoeba is one of the things you will need to do. So I encourage you very much to try to install Tatoeba and to report to us if you find any issues during your installation. In fact, last week with our member Polgar, we actually ran into a few issues, which because we did all of this live, we didn't have preparation, and that was the whole point. That was to see like authentically what can happen to somebody who tries to install Tatoeba. And so if you also have problems that are different from his problems and you are not sure how to solve, please let us know. So you can let us know on GitHub, or you can post on Tatoeba as well. But now the good news is that today Polgar is back with us. So let me add you, Polgar. Hi, Polgar. So Polgar is back with us.
Hello.
And because he eventually managed to get Tatoeba to run, so we're going to have first a few minutes so that he can show us that it works, and he can explain to us a little bit briefly how he solved the issue from last time. So maybe before we get to that, the issue from last time was that there were some permissions when he tried to run the last command to be able to launch Tatoeba. It couldn't write some file somewhere, and so it couldn't start the website. So Polgar, I'm gonna switch to the screen sharing and show your screen. Okay, so
Okay, so everything working now? Things can get a little laggy with screen sharing. Anyways, so yeah, there were two noticeable issues basically last time. One was related to like file paths containing non-English characters, simply put. So that could be resolved pretty easily, and well, the workaround is still in use. Like, still basically the way to come around this was to set the vagrant home environment variable to a path that surely doesn't contain any special characters. Well, don't get frightened about this, because yes, as I said, we managed to solve this last time as well, and we managed to do so because this is pretty much a known issue that you can read about on Git or places online, so you can just find a fitting workaround. So this isn't the stranger part. The stranger part was related to these permission checks. Actually, I investigated this little further when we finished the stream, and what I did was sort of just usual, making sure that everything is as it should be. So actually making the restart, taking the Tatoeba folder one level higher. So it used to be under new programs and then it didn't work. Now it's directly under the F drive. And I think I also double checked the permissions somewhere around security. So I edited the permissions that one can have to this folder. But I think this might be like the least thing because I'm not sure that it actually changed. But yes, probably it doesn't hurt to double check the permissions. One can suspect that since new programs is, I think, my default place to install programs, probably Windows manages its permissions a bit differently than it would with any other folder. Anyway, so to make sure, here it can be seen, like this time I didn't actually open VirtualBox by hand, so it just runs in the background. So I entered this folder with git bash, and yes, first there was this mistake because of the encoding, so I set the vagrant home folder like last time, and then I ran vagrant up again, and yes, usual logging of stuff, and it works this time. So it takes some time to run up.
Okay.
But it's already quite fast for the second time. For the first time, it can take a while. But yes, one can see that it's up and running now.
Great.
Even if we didn't open
Okay.
the VirtualBox interface.
So, okay, thank you for showing us. So in summary, the problems you ran across last time were, encoding problems, which I think you solved it. There was another thing you had to change was the path in VirtualBox. You had to also change the path to somewhere else, but this one here, so to set the vagrant home, this is something you need to make sure to execute in case.
Yes, from what I see, the place itself or the folder name is like just a convention, so it doesn't absolutely have to be this given folder because this is something that Vagrant itself will create.
Okay. All right, but so good. So now you have Tatoeba running, and yeah. So before we continue, so I should mention yesterday we actually tried to have this stream yesterday, but it didn't happen because YouTube interface fooled me and I didn't click a button. So let me switch back. Right. So because of that, the stream didn't happen, but today it's running. Unfortunately, yesterday we had a guest who was Ricardo, and he's not available today. Like I had asked him if he could come back today, and initially yes, but he had last minute emergency. So what I'd like to do is maybe take some time to summarize what I discussed with him yesterday. So because we spent like 1 hour and a half discussing about one idea he had and he wished to see in Tatoeba, and we started to code a little bit, or at least I started to show him a little bit how he could do that. But so I'll take a bit of time to explain that. And at the same time, for you, Polgar, you'll get an idea about, for your own idea, because you also have something you wish to do. I mean, not in Tatoeba itself, but related to Tatoeba, and that will give you an idea, well, how you can achieve what you want to achieve, at least the process of how to get there. So we'll get to my screen. Give me a moment. Okay, so I should be sharing my screen now. Let's go to GitHub. So whenever somebody has an idea about something they want to do or something they need in Tatoeba, the place to go is the GitHub repository. Maybe I should show something quickly about, I mean, in case you don't know how to access the GitHub repository, you can actually go to the Tatoeba website, go to the footer, and in the section developers, you actually have this link to GitHub, which will lead you to the GitHub repository. And so in this repository, this is where you find the source code of Tatoeba. But you also find other sections, and one of them is issues. And the issues is the place basically where we document all the bugs, so all the things that don't work properly, and also all the things that could be improved. And so that would be for anybody who needs something or who wants to change something in Tatoeba, that could be the first place to go. So go to the issues, and then you can click new issue, and then you'll have several categories where you can either report a bug, suggest a feature request, or ask for a new language, or you can just open as well a blank issue. So in the case of Ricardo, this is what he did for his idea. He had one idea about PDFs. So this is his ticket here. Allow to download lists and translations in PDF. So he went ahead and created a new issue, and he described basically what he wanted here. So in your case, Polgar, that's one path you can do, but not necessarily. You can also, if you don't have a GitHub account, you can also just write on the wall of Tatoeba. So meaning you need a Tatoeba account. So you can go to the wall and just write over here. So I personally read quite regularly the messages on the wall, and if somebody posts an idea, there's a high chance that I will read it. And sometimes some of the Tatoeba members will also see people posting suggestions, ideas, bugs, and they will create the ticket in GitHub for you. So you can write about your ideas here. Or the last thing you can do is to create directly a pull request. So if you know programming, and if you had no issues into like learning how the code of Tatoeba works, and you know what to do in the code itself, you can also directly open a pull request. So I think we'll dedicate another day to explaining how to create pull requests, because that will take probably a bit of time. But just so you're aware, you can directly open the pull request, and in the description of the pull request, you explain what is it that you improved. So we actually have, I think most of the pull requests listed here are not necessarily linked to a ticket. Like if we take this one, for instance, yeah, this is somebody who made a pull request to try to improve how fast the links, I mean the sentence, the translations are displayed when you link sentences, and yeah, there was no prior issue, and he just explained the problem in the description here. So that being said, I guess we'll keep the whole topic for Ricardo's idea for when he's available. I think that will be better. But since you are with us today, Polgar, I guess we could discuss a bit about your idea and see what we can do about it, and see how we could get started about it. So we mentioned it already quickly during the stream last time, but let's explain again. So do you wanna explain a little bit?
Sure. So the basic goal would be to make a Discord server for Tatoeba, and for this I would think it would be quite an integral feature to be able to see at least the core community part of Tatoeba, that is the wall. So even though it's technically possible that someone does this without any further idea about the server and the whole Tatoeba site and how it works in the background, it would be pretty fragile, because it would be like pretending to be a browser and parsing the content and making like requests regularly. So as if someone just automated someone sitting at the computer and refreshing Tatoeba over and over again. So
okay,
I
maybe
think this could work better if it got some support on the Tatoeba side of the things.
all right. So maybe before we go further, so I've seen that I think Ricardo or maybe somebody else created some time ago a Discord server for Tatoeba. Is it? Are you part of it? Are you part of this server, or? I mean, were you aware this server
Yes,
existed?
I think. Well, it was a common idea.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. Well, the story doesn't really matter, but yes, basically, I was the one who like directly requested at the end of the day that there could be a Discord server for Tatoeba.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, because I personally didn't join it, but so you're part of this server, that this unofficial Discord server. Maybe you can. I mean, if you are part of it, I don't know if you would mind like showing us. And like there are perhaps some people who don't even know what Discord is, so maybe it's worth showing what Discord looks like briefly.
Yes, well, just a moment.
Sure. Let me know when you're ready to share.
Okay, so this time I will share the app itself, not the whole not the whole desktop.
Okay. All right.
So it should show now.
Yep. Yeah. It's I'm sharing it now.
So honestly, I don't want to get anyone disappointed, because it was really like there was like one occasion when the link of the server was posted. So as it's pretty noticeable, only a couple of people have seen it, and it's yet to hit any kind of serious activity. But actually, Ricardo set up things pretty nicely. I would say it's almost a bit too much for the beginning when it's not really used anymore. But already, as you can see, in case you don't know Discord, actually I'm a bit surprised that probably I see this with this logo because I got an admin permission on this server. So the basic structure is that there are text channels and there are voice channels. So you can hold conversations in the voice channels, and the text channels are a bit of a mixture of like a chat wall and the forum. I think the overall structure of Discord is a bit like this. So you can use it like a chat service, but you can also use it like a forum because messages don't just run out. So you have basically an infinite history and some further ways to structure information that's being thrown around.
So my first question here would be, I mean, because you want your goal would be to be able to see, I mean, as a first step, at least to be able to see wall messages in this, let's say let's say this becomes the server that you want to use, to see the messages in this server, right? The messages from the wall.
Yes.
And so the messages on the wall, they have a bit of a, I mean, each thread, how would you represent it in the Discord? Because it seems like it's just, you know, an infinite like flat structure of text. There is no like, this is a reply of this other, like how would you structure that? Or you don't really intend to structure that, and you just you would just directly post the message and the link to the message?
I think this is something that is pretty much constrained by what implementation we can come up with. But actually, lately, threads are actually a thing.
Okay.
I don't know whether there are serious limitations about how many threads one can create, but it's definitely a thing. Hopefully no one really minds, but I can show this here for the here in the case of Learn Romanian server. So for example, here is this classroom, and lately there is this habit that one lesson gets one thread.
Okay.
So it doesn't spam the general classroom channel. Okay. And yes, this is logged now because, yeah, well, the class is over, way over, one could say. But yes, this can have, like, threads have separate, like, member controls. So by default, people don't automatically get notified about messages in one thread. But yes, let's not get into like deep technicalities. I'm just saying that actually threads exist, but I'm not sure whether it's really feasible to use them for this purpose. So for now, I would be like pretty happy at first if we could like just get notified regularly about new messages. and then there could be some way to display how they are related.
Okay, I mean, on your side, do you have like a technical solution for this? Like, do you have an idea of how Tatoeba could provide that, or it's still like completely open?
So I have an idea to some extent, but it's really more like where I would start experimenting in what direction. So as I said, I'm not 100% sure that we can like reasonably push messages. I mean, technically it's probably possible, but yes, I don't think that anyone would want like hardly integrate a Discord feature into Tatoeba itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not exactly sure how much one can push messages. I would be pretty happy at first if there was an API, a REST API, for example, where one can at least retrieve messages from the wall.
Okay.
And that shouldn't be very difficult.
Okay, so actually,
And then it would still be on my end. There would be a problem when I need to make the requests, because that wouldn't be automatic. But at least I could like poll, like make it regularly and stay up to date. So that's something that I think would be pretty useful, even if someone wants to do something else with wall messages. So that
okay.
would be pretty general.
Okay, so I mean, what you're talking about here, having like a REST endpoint where you can fetch messages, that would have been my proposal as well to you. So okay, so in your case here, so yeah, you have what we've seen is like there is something you want, well, not exactly in Tatoeba itself, but you want something new from Tatoeba, so that you can integrate with another system. And I mean, in general, the topic of having like an API is like in very high demand, not among the regular users, but like there's once in a while a developer who is doing some mobile app or something else, and they come and they ask us if we have an API or not. The answer used to be no, we don't, until like some months ago, where somebody actually made a pull request for some beta version of an API. So we have something in the code that is not yet an official API, but that still provides, that started to provide REST endpoint to retrieve a sentence and its translations, and to retrieve also search results. And we could add something new for you to retrieve.
May I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can stop sharing, yes. So yeah, we can add something for you to retrieve messages. So maybe that's something we can start working on today. But I would say we don't have to spend too much time on this. At least I can give you pointers about where to go. So let's go back to my screen for a moment. This one, yes. Okay. So let me think for a second. Okay, so in your case here, about like how you get to implement things into Tatoeba. So in your case here, this is not something where you necessarily need to create an issue. This is probably something that you can implement like on your side and then create a pull request. So we're not going to deal with the pull request today, but I should show another page that gives a bit of steps about creating a pull request in Tatoeba. So when you arrive in the Tatoeba repository, at the bottom there will be a README with some information about how you can contribute. And in here there is a link about that. So this is one guide of how you can start contributing by obviously contacting us. You will need a GitHub account because you will need to be able to fork the code and push new code. Yeah, installing Tatoeba, this is the thing that we did with you, Polgar, last week. And then, where is the link? Yes, okay, about GitHub. So about GitHub, the one thing you'll need to do is to learn how to do pull requests, and you'll need to understand how to use Git. So on your site, Polgar, I can assume you have no problem with Git, you know how it works. And have you ever done a pull request in general to another open source project, or never?
Yes, I think I did like exactly one or two.
Okay.
So
okay, so you're not completely new to that. But anyway.
Yes, I wouldn't say I'm used to it, but but I've managed to do it at least once.
Okay, so but if you know Git, it should be no problem. Normally in this guideline, you have some steps about how to do a pull request. But the first step is that you have to create a branch on your side. Yeah, then you modify the code, then you basically do the whole Git thing to push your code. And then once your code is pushed, you from the GitHub user interface. Well, I don't have any pull request ready, but maybe I can. Maybe I can, if I have any branch. I have some branch. Okay. Actually, the UI changed a bit, so I'm not sure where to go anymore. Code. Branches over here. Okay, yeah. So yeah, basically you go to the list of your branches, and I think it's then fairly simple. You just click new pull request and just fill up description, title, click create pull request. So yeah, so that's that part here. In case like you need a bit more guidance on how to start a pull request, there is actually in Tatoeba there is a page that will go through these steps. But I think we're not going to get to this point today with you, Polgar. Maybe we actually do some concrete coding. So you have the code already. Maybe we can, if you're okay, we could switch back to your screen. And no, actually, maybe before we switch to your screen, let me show you a little bit of the code about where, like, to give you some pointers where to go. All right. So that is Tatoeba's code that I opened in Visual Studio Code. So this is the software I use for development for Tatoeba, at least. So over here we have the whole Tatoeba source code, and if you go into the source and then controller, we have over here a file called API v0 controller, and this is basically the file in which we have our two first endpoint for the API. So as you can see here, we have one that is called sentence, And because of this one here, what we can do, yeah, actually, so I'll show it on the real website, and at the same time, I think I will launch locally my local Tatoeba. So while that starts, yeah. So this API v0 means that we can type API v0 sentence / and then a sentence number. I'll just take this one that I checked before. And then we retrieve from it a JSON that basically has all the information about the sentence and the translations. So the content that we have here is actually the same kind of data that we would use to display this block here. The information in this block here is basically the information you can retrieve from this endpoint. And so for you, Polgar, I guess you would want to add something like, what would you need actually? Wall, something about the wall, and to retrieve, maybe you'll want like to retrieve messages after that are like after a certain date or something like that, or even after a certain ID.
Yes, probably that would be helpful. Or like easier than handled on the client side, even if it may be possible.
So
it's
basically
harder.
Okay.
No.
So then we could have like a query parameter, like could we start with just ID to be simple, like from ID, and then so I don't know what is the last ID that we have here. So if we go to the call, this is the last message. So the ID here would be this. So let's say if you wanted, so let's say you retrieve already all IDs and you want ID from this one, you could go here. So right now, if I try this, it's just going to say not found. But ideally, the goal is that if I would call this URL, it would give you the JSON with an array of all the wall messages which ID is above this number. All right. Okay, so that would be the goal for you. And so just so I can give you an example how this works. So most of the code for the API is actually going to happen in this, or at least the starting point is over here. And so the name of the controller is API v0, and like the framework that we use makes it that basically looking at the URL, the first, so there is a special structure to this URL where the first element here is the language, and then afterwards it's the name of the controller, and afterwards is the name of the action. And the action is basically the function inside the controller. So in our case, we're in API v0. So in the URL, it's this one. So there is some conversion like to make it that it's an underscore here. And then the second one is if we want this to be the string here, if we want it to be wall, then we will have to create a function that is called wall. And then the query parameters, so here we can see an example with the sentence. The query parameter, no, sorry, this is not the query parameters. Here is the path parameters. So that would be, yeah, if we go back, so that would be anything that goes after any other information that goes after the the action would be the parameters in the path. Here, if we're going to use a query parameter, oh, I lost. Okay. Here, if we're going to use a query parameter, actually this is more about, like this is what the search uses. So I don't think here you could easily guess, but yeah, that would be a way to use query parameter. But the first thing to know is that to be able to handle a new URL, you would have to add this function. And just maybe to quickly test, because I think there might be something else to do after this, just as a basis. So up, and we're going to say that the JSON is just yeah, let's just have an array with 1, 2, 3. And I feel there's something else to do, but that's something we can, so after adding this, we can already try to go to the local. Oops. So localhost API v0 wall. So if I type this, okay, yeah, it asked me to log in because that's the second part. There is somewhere, so that is something that you probably don't find by yourself easily when you start developing. It's not in out. I will have to remember exactly. Okay, there's a file somewhere that defines permissions, and I would imagine that yeah, API v0. So basically adding it here would allow that this this URL is accessible to the public. That's why it's in here in public actions. And I don't know if I will need to refresh anything. API v0 wall. Okay, at least it's visible, but it has some errors. Because I forgot to encode. Okay. Right, so yeah, basically, so I don't know if you managed to follow everything, but yeah, that is basically the starting point for you about yeah, how to create an endpoint and how to return something. So from here, as you wish, Polgar, either that's enough information for you and you want to like process it a little bit offline, or we can continue a bit and we can switch to your screen, and you can, because now you have Tatoeba running, so you can just first of all do exactly what I did, and then try to go to the next step, which would be to figure out how to retrieve messages from the wall. And for that, I could guide you a bit.
Okay, so first off, let's try to get this working. It looked so simple, like like last time, but last time not everything went according to plan.
And nothing
Right.
ever goes according to plan, so
So yeah, that's almost why we are here.
Mhm.
At least somewhat similar. So
All right, let me just first of all switch to your screen.
just
Yeah.
open this one as it was. Actually, what I couldn't quite follow was that, I don't know, config part or.
Okay, the config is this auth actions. So yeah, it's in the config, and then you have like a file called auth actions.
Oh,
And
here
yeah,
it is.
it's in this one where basically it defines what are the actions that are available to everyone and what are the actions that only people who are logged in can access, what are the actions that only certain roles can access. So yeah. So in your case, like I mean, we don't really need any restrictions about who can access this endpoint. So you would just add the value inside this
Yeah, I
API
suppose.
visual.
Come on. So yeah, I turned this red because of the version control.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I haven't committed. Of course, that's a problem here. Is this 4 spaces indent?
Yeah, it's 4 spaces.
Because just before my OCD triggered.
Okay. So maybe as a simple step, instead of using a query parameter, let's pretend that the path parameter is going to be the ID from. So you could use, yeah, you could pass as a parameter an ID, and so if somebody types slash API v0 slash wall slash 1, it will give all the messages starting from 1. Yeah, so now from here, maybe you can start setting up the return like I did, so that we check on your side that it returns something, that it displays properly.
Eventually, I will need some. Oops. Quite sure there is something like code. So this is like a hash, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is basically an array, but yeah, in this case, it's like a hash map, but you could just do what I did. You could just do what I did at first, which is just you put a flat array with like a bunch of values in there, or you can also put like a key value array as you wish.
Yes, I will. I will put something right there, I think.
Okay.
Like this. At first, it will be enough to have the ID.
Okay. All right. Let's see if this displays probably in your local instance.
Oh.
Okay, good. So
Okay.
So now you have the starting point. Now the question is, how would you retrieve the list of wall messages starting from this ID? So for that, are you familiar with like web programming or PHP in general, or is it something like I'm not sure what is your level of programming exactly?
So I don't think I have actually used PHP. A bit more than a year ago, I did some research on PHP in general in case it would come handy later on. So probably it would look familiar, but it's definitely not like the right methods and the right ways of doing something in PHP would come instantly.
Okay, no problem. I mean, if you like, how long have you been programming? Like, how long have you written code?
Well, I think I started learning way back when I was like 14, and
Okay. Okay, so I mean, then
this is my kind of like second year of working after university.
okay.
So I've been pretty much surrounded by codes for the last 5 years or so.
Okay, so I can consider that you have no idea adapting to, like, if you read code that in a language you've not necessarily been familiar with, like you would have no problem really understanding and adapting to that, right?
Yes, well, at least for these mainstream-ish languages that are sort of familiar to each other.
Okay. So I need a moment to think about how I can teach you the next step. Because I mean probably the most, not maybe not efficient, but the most simple way to figure out for you to figure out what to write next would be to have an example that already exists in the code. So what we can do, maybe as a very simple step, is not necessarily to retrieve the IDs that all the messages that start from a certain ID, but to do the kind of the same thing that we did for the sentence, which is just to retrieve the message which ID is equal to whatever ID you have in the parameter. And I think for that, the example in the API controller itself probably gives you a bit of hint, so we can have a look at this code there. So the first thing in this function is that you're loading a model. So the model will give you access basically to the database. So in this case, we're loading the sentences model. In your case, you'll want to load the model for the wall, which is called wall. So afterwards, afterwards there is a check to make sure that the ID is a number and not something else. And if it is a number, then we retrieve, so there is a special function called get sentence with ID. And this function will retrieve the sentence. And so this sentence, get sentence with ID, you'll actually find, so this is a function that we coded ourselves, and you'll find it in one of the files in the, so that should be in the model. And then you have a table. Wait, no, yeah, it should be in table, yes. And then you have the sentence table, sentences table. Right. And if you search in here, there should be a function called get sentence with ID. Or not. Maybe I'm mixing with something else. Wait. Not? Okay, get sentence with, but without the ID, sorry. Get sentence with, and then you pass the ID. So in the same pattern, we have another file that is called wall table. And in here, so in here, I don't know what we have. Maybe we have something already that retrieves a specific message, but I don't think so.
Initialize build rules, validation default, before save, after save, get messages, threaded, get last messages. Interesting. Get root message of reply, get whole thread containing.
So
I'm curious about this get last messages.
Actually, get last messages might be, well, it's not exactly what you want to do because you want still to have from a specific point in time, but this get last messages is what we use actually in the, if you go to the wall, there is this sidebar, right? Where you see actually the 10 last messages. And the get last messages is the function that is used to retrieve this list of messages. So yeah, a little bit up. Yeah, it took a bit of time to load, but yeah, these items here are the last messages, and the function get last messages retrieves this list here. Right, so in your case, to retrieve for a specific ID, there is nothing that exists yet, but there is a function, as we've seen here, that maybe you would just need to readapt a little bit to be able to retrieve messages starting from a specific ID. So if I explain you a little bit the syntax here, what it means. So it calls this find. So find is basically, you're familiar with SQL, right? Like.
Yes.
Okay. So find is basically doing a select. And then, yeah, so basically the whole function here is going to be, it's like the PHP or the cake PHP version of, I mean, it's the translation of the SQL into the cake PHP language. So find is basically a select. Order desk is basically to say that when you find the result, you order them by date, and that the latest date is first. Limit means that you only take, you don't take all the messages, but only the number that is specified in number of last messages. Where is the where, and contain is like for the join. So to be able to join with other tables. So, and then the last part, all, I can't remember exactly what it means, to be honest, but yeah.
And probably this is like building the
So this is
the
like,
query
yeah,
summary.
yeah. This is building the query, and so in your case, I would say you could almost, so you could create a new function that basically almost copies this, but you would tweak it a little bit so that it takes for parameter, well, the parameter would not be number of last messages, but you could, if you want, you could give it a date, or if you prefer, you can also start with an ID. And then you would have to figure out how to build the query to retrieve all messages. That are above.
Ordering is fine, but in this case I would prefer ascending order.
So yeah, limits, maybe you don't want necessarily to limit.
What does hidden mean, by the way?
Okay, so hidden is one of the fields in the database. So if you want to know the structure of the wall table, we actually have that so not in the src folder, but we have a folder from the root folder. We have a folder called docs, and then database, and then tables, and then there's the wall, and you will see here the SQL to create the wall. So one of the field is called hidden, and this is used basically when we have spam or we have people like starting to fight and we need to just hide the messages so that yeah, they stop. But yeah. So just
I think this can probably stay. This is more like or like a design decision that it's probably more meaningful to not leak hidden messages on the API either.
Yeah, I mean that's unless you feel for your own community you'd like to see hidden messages, but I mean for us it's more a way to I mean, we don't use it that often. Most of the time we use it to hide the spam. Technically we could also delete it, but the main purpose of it was to just stop a fight when people start fighting and it's going too far. We start hiding messages to make people understand that they should stop. So
yes, anyway, I think this can stay.
Okay, so then
it's a bit sneaky if the API leaks hidden messages.
Yeah. Right, but yeah, so in your case, meaning that you would have then two conditions. You have the first conditions you don't want, so you want messages that are not hidden. So hidden equals 0 means that, I mean, hidden false, basically 0 means false here.
Yes, this can stay.
And then if you want to add a second condition, normally you would just put a comma and then put your second condition in there. So you have an example in the function below where like you see that the where has like parent ID is null, LFT is lower or equal to something, and RGHT is higher or equal to something else. So you can sort of follow that same pattern.
Yes, I just started thinking that this is an interesting interface. But yes, I suppose there is ID and I accept it to be greater than ID itself. I don't know, maybe it looks better the way it is in the other as well.
This is how we format it so that there's like more of a clear list, but in itself it's not let's say it's not a critical. I mean, it depends. I also like to have nice code formatting, but we are not too strict about that.
Yes, as they say, consistency isn't a bad thing either. And something like this.
All right. So I think we have a query that maybe, I mean, we have now a function that maybe will give what you want. So we could give it a try. So now you have the function.
Yes. I'm just not sure whether this contain part is useful in this case.
That is useful if you want to display the actual username of the author of the post instead of his ID. So
yes, that might be useful.
Yeah, because otherwise you would know who is the author. So in this case, it's called owner, but it's actually the author, the person who wrote the message, and it's an ID. So you would need to join it with the users table to be able to know what is the username.
Okay, so ID and username. All right, I'm just a bit curious how it knows what fields it should join.
It's
because like I suppose it joins owner with the ID of user.
Yes, so this is defined if you scroll up in the wall table, like the file you have open. If you scroll at the beginning in the initialize, we defined the relations between the table, and we can see that the wall table belongs to user with foreign key owner. So this basically defines that in the table wall, the ID that is in the owner corresponds to the user and the, it's hard to explain with words, but I guess you get the point. So in the wall owner field is linked to the users.id field in the users table.
Yes, I think this is fair enough. So
this is how it knows.
Yeah, it didn't get new name so far. Yes, I don't think. Yeah, I don't even know whether PHP has function overload, but surely not over the same one parameter. So maybe let's give it a different name. So this is the function that I could probably call. So here it was the sentences
Yeah.
was loaded. I think I could
Yeah.
do this for now.
Could pretty much copy.
Load model can stay, but I should load the wall instead. Numeric can stay. Yes, I don't need this because I have better. It makes sense here. This point. So get sentence with this wall that I just loaded. Get messages after. ID can stay. And I don't have anything further. So what will this return?
So this should return an array with with all the messages.
I'm gonna still put it into an object. I think it's better for JSON. I'm not even sure whether a row array is considered a valid JSON, but I think it's not that good for parting. Oops.
Okay, so
well, it did try something definitely.
Yeah. So it's okay. It's step by step. So here it says there's an ID that is ambiguous. Okay. Probably because we have a join somewhere, and it could be ID from the wall or ID from the users.
Yeah, well, we did write ID here, so this is indeed an SQL error.
Yeah. So I think to remove the ambiguity, I'm not sure anymore if you would just write wall.id or if there's another way.
Yeah, I don't know whether. I mean, it's not really nice, but because I shouldn't know what the instance name is, so I might hit the nail in the head, but like we can try, but yes, it does work some way.
Okay. So now,
even if I got something empty,
because you didn't, well, because you don't have any messages on your wall yet. So
yeah, that can very well be right. I suppose there would be hopefully some better way, because here we sort of assumed that, like, we assumed that we know the underlying SQL.
Yeah, I mean, looking quickly at the other parts of the code, I don't think we have found another way to do it. So I think it will stay like this for now. But yeah, maybe we get Gilux another time. He could. I mean, anyway, once.
Yeah, probably. I would suspect that there should be something better. This feels a bit like self SQL injection.
So just so you know, once once you have some code ready and you make a pull request, the next step is like, obviously it doesn't automatically go into Tatoeba. There will be like people reviewing your code, so that's something we can show another time. But when you make your pull request, it's also an occasion to say, okay, I coded it this way, but I'm not sure if that's the best way. Like, do you suggest something else? And this is where like the discussion happens about making the code a little bit better.
Yes, I think that part is pretty clear, but yes, that's an important point anyways. I would like to see it working, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So last time you said, or maybe it was even before on testing, but
Mm-hmm.
you definitely said something about some default
Yeah.
user that I can try
Yeah.
on the local instance.
So you can try. One of them is just contributor, and the password is 123456. Like the information about the default user, you can find it on the page that explains how to install Tatoeba.
Okay. Thank you. So now I have one. Okay. So 3 is, I think, enough to see the basic idea.
Yeah.
So yes, I did manage to get ID2 and ID3 in this case. If I write 2, I get this one. If I write 3, I get an empty message. If I write 0, I get all 3. So, and yes, the order seems correct, although it doesn't seem really risky because the IDs are one after the other. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the default order some way in the underlying SQL.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't order specifically, I think you're not really always guaranteed to have them in a certain order, but either way. So, yeah, I think so. I think it's a good point to stop the stream. I think like it was really good like today to achieve this. So you basically learned how to add a new endpoint in Tatoeba for the let's say beta experimental API. So I think we can, I mean, at least for the activities today, I think we can stop here. So I will switch back to webcams. I don't see you on webcam anymore. Here you go. Okay. So Polgar, thank you very much for being again our guest today. I hope we have a few more people, but we learned today how to basically create a new URL, a new page. It's not really a page here, but a new URL for Tatoeba, and how to read from the database and feed content into this new page. In your case, so what you started to implement here will be useful for your for your special request to be able to display wall messages in a Discord server. But yeah, technically, as you said, at some point, this could be useful for anybody else who would want to do something with wall messages. So now you figured out a beginning of code. Maybe you'll want to continue a bit like offline to tweak it a little bit and experiment a bit more. Like, what if there's 300 messages? Like, how you do the pagination and stuff like that. But I think that's a really good start, what we did today. So in your side, you already know how to make a pull request. But I think so. One of the next streams will be showing concretely what it looks like when somebody does a pull request. Maybe we'll be taking a much simpler problem to solve than what you did today. It's something that we can actually solve during the stream, and we will go through the whole process of making a pull request so that people can see. So today was obviously a bit technical. If there were any viewers who were not very familiar with programming, I hope this was not too scary, but this is also to show you that to get started, it doesn't actually take too much time to dive. I mean, Polgar has never contributed to Tatoeba before, and within here, like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, he could already do something concrete. So that's really great. I didn't check the chat at all if there were questions, but I'm not seeing any. So just a few messages.
Yeah, I see the same.
Okay. But anyway, so I think we can stop here. Thank you very much again, Polgar. Now for anybody who's watching it, well, probably right now not so many, but who's watching it, who's watching the video afterwards, if you're interested to join and participate like Polgar did, please just contact me. The goal is really everybody is welcome, so at any level you can just join. You don't need to be as good in programming as Polgar. You can just be a very beginner, and we'll take something very simple, and step by step we learn. Okay, so thanks again. Have a nice evening, and see you next time.
Goodbye.